Don't worry, men. Just because we're going down a cliff doesn't mean we're going to die or our car's going to catch on fire. No, don't worry. Just make sure nobody lights a lighter or anything. Otherwise, because I think the petrol is leaking. So if no one lights a lighter, then we should be fine. The damaged car pending. What did you say? No! How did it happen? I think they're on their way to a funeral. It's a very strange way to go. Very strange route. Yes. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome at last to my review of the first ever James Bond film, excluding the 1954 Casino Royale, but that was more of a TV episode. But here we go, Dr. No. Now, although I've reviewed Spectre on the main channel already, because it's a 2015 film and I want to do those ones, so I got it out of the way and done. So that one's already done. And we've also done the 1954 unofficial climax episode of Casino Royale. So now we're finally going in order for the official Eon Productions James Bond series, starting with the original Dr. No. So the plot of Dr. No basically is James Bond is sent to Jamaica to investigate the disappearance of a fellow agent, Commander Strangways, and his new secretary after a routine transmission was cut off. So James Bond, along with help from CIA agent Felix Leiter and a local fisherman called Quarrel, almost forgot the name, Bond investigates what happens to Strangways, and eventually they come across Dr. No, a villainous agent of Spectre. With help from Honey Rider, a girl Bond and Quarrel meet on the beach of Crab Key, Bond then heads off to defeat Dr. No. So that's basically the plot of Dr. No. Of course, quite a lot of the film is Bond on Jamaica, looking around, trying to find out what happened to Strangways. He has to deal with several of Dr. No's hench people trying to get at him, as some information of Bond was leaked by one of the hench people, Miss Tarot, who works at government office. Bond eventually gets her arrested after a date with her. Typical Bond. Other henchmen include the three blind mice and a chauffeur driving their car. They're the ones who get rid of Strangways, and eventually Bond has them killed off as well, following them falling off a cliff. There's also some guys who killed the secretary. We don't see them again. Professor Dent is pretty much the main villain of the story after Dr. No, and pretty much takes up most of the... well, not most of the screen time. He's pretty much the main villain before we get to Dr. No, and in terms of the overall, it's the second main villain, I suppose. And I think that's pretty much it for henchmen on Jamaica. Of course, you've got all the hench people and workers on the island itself. So, yeah, this is a really interesting, entertaining spy thriller installment. It is a bit slow in places, as Bond is mostly going around investigating and talking to people, but there is quite a few great action sequences thrown in the first half of the film. The remaining half sees Bond and Quarrel with Honey on the beach. On the island. The beach scenes are great. And it's really on the Crab Key Islands that the film picks up the story a bit more. It picks up more of the pace, as we're mostly following Bond on Jamaica looking around. The first 10 minutes of the film after the titles, are quite quick in showing us what's happening, what's going on. But once we get introduced to Bond, it slows down a bit, and then the film pretty much slows down for the majority of the film until we get to the climax, where it speeds up again. And it pretty much it's just trying to, I suppose it's in a hurry to start, and then once it's got to Bond, it can slow down, and then it's in a hurry to finish once Dr. No's been met, they've had their dinner scene, and Bond's escaped captive. So once Dr. No is in the process of being defeated, the film picks up a bit more, just so Bond and Honey can escape after Dr. No is killed. Yeah, that's just how it feels. It's quite a slow film, but it's quick at the start and towards the end. The scenes throughout the film, mostly on Jamaica, might put some people off, as there are quite a few slower scenes where they're just talking around. There's not really any music going on for those parts. It's mostly in the action scenes the music is happening, and some more spy adventurous scenes. But when it's mostly talking, it's quite quiet. Though we don't want to hear too much loud sound going on, I suppose. I have to say the editing isn't completely perfect. There's a lot of jump cuts, especially at the start with the death of the secretary. It's very obvious, and there's quite a few jump starts. The dubbing, they like dubbing people a lot in these earlier installments. In fact, probably earlier films in general. And it's very noticeable. Even some people who didn't need to be dubbed, like the actress playing Sylvia Trench, her voice is in the trailer, and she sounds fine. She could have still used her voice. Bernard Leeds' dub has him say MI7 instead of MI6, despite his lip moving. And despite, I think it's Nikki Vanderson, I think basically the mistress of James Bond actress dubbing, I suppose, or the queen of James Bond film female character dubbings. She has to do quite a few characters. She has to do Honey, she has to do Miss Tarot, and she has to do Sylvia. Thankfully, not Moneypenny. I think Lois Maxwell gets to keep her actual voice, thankfully. And like I said, Sylvia the actress of Sylvia could have dubbed her own character if needed at all, and it is very obvious that some parts other people are dubbing them. I think Nikki Anderson also dubs that photographer woman, and they obviously didn't bother to, when the actress said, "You're hurting," they didn't bother to take the take again to say it, so to get her to say, "You're hurting me," as that was a mistake on her part. And in that case, the dub was probably accurate to what was happening in the scene, even though, again, it makes it even clearer that the actress accidentally didn't say the word "me" the first time round. In fact, I didn't even know what the point of the photographer was. She wasn't really that necessary. She just took some pictures and then left off. Maybe it was so Dr. No would see what Bond looked like, but just, didn't feel like it was needed. And in some behind the scenes, the actress wasn't exactly comfortable with the role that she had to play, because she was playing a villainous character. The chauffeur, on the other hand, he was pretty fun to see getting beaten up by Bond when Bond discovered he was the villain. He was a henchman. Another thing that's always nagged me is the Honey singing when she comes out of the ocean. It's a great scene, it's great shots, however, she's singing and we can't see her mouth moving. And then we see it moving when we get a closer up shot. So with the shot of her coming out of the water, maybe you could have turned down the volume of the singing, or reshot it with her moving the mouth. This film is one of the weaker ones in terms of a edited, processed installment. I have to say. I will say the majority of the film is edited well, which is a lot more than some other instalments later on down the line, one of them not too long away. But it's also pretty noticeable. However, when it comes to cinematography, the film is pretty much perfect. Apart from a few retakes needed for the editing, it is pretty much brilliant. It is a great looking film. And even the slower, more talking scenes can be more interesting on a rewatch, especially on the island, although again they do take up quite a bit of time on the island. It is quite isn't really a lengthy film, but does feel a bit slower in places. I mentioned this a lot. Cast-wise, well, some of the cast were dubbed, so probably by other actors. Actor voices, as I mentioned, Nicky Vanderson on some of them, but I can say that the characters were performed vocally and physically by their actors, especially Sean Connery as Bond, as we're pretty much following him throughout the majority of the film, and Connery does an amazing performance. You can tell why the producers liked him and why they thought he was a great Bond, and over the time his performance would develop a bit more and become James Bond everybody knows and loves. So, as a first film, this is definitely a great start for Connery as 007, and he's really the most notable person to talk about. I mean, there's other great people in this as well, but I'm not entirely sure which ones have had their voices dubbed by other people and not. I know some people have kept their voices, like Bernard Lee did, but I would say everyone's done a good job, and character-wise, they're all great. I like how menacing Dr. No is in the first time we hear his voice when he's talking to Dent in that room. Lovely set design from Ken Adam, by the way. Dr. No is pretty creepy in that scene. When he appears properly, he is a good villain. It's just I wouldn't consider him one of the best. However, I do like that more creepier tone he had with him earlier on in the film when we first heard the voice. And nice tie-in the fact that he's part of Spectre, so it ties in with the organisation that we're going to see in the next film. And we'll be continuing the adventures of Bond versus Spectre soon. Very soon. Is there anything else? Not really much else to say. My thoughts on the title sequence. It looks great, or at least the first third of it. Then it changes to people dancing for some reason, and then the three blind mice walking. And the music also changes from the Bond theme to some bongo tapping, and then the three blind mice song, which continues into the first scene. Which, by the way, was a great first scene. But the opening titles with the gun barrel going into the dots and the James Bond theme blaring away, masterful, and just looks amazing. And I'm glad that they kept the gun barrel for future films in the series. It became as much of a staple of the series as the title sequence. So I'm glad it was incorporated into this title sequence, and then into, at the start, or in some cases, Quantum of Solace and Skyfall, the end of the film. In Casino Royale's case, it was back at the start of the title sequence, but not before the pre-title scene, which will become a thing from the next film onwards. And the music is very good by Bond Norman, although there's quite a bit of quieter moments, and there's some very strange sound effects used in some places, especially when Bond's trying to escape. But the music as a whole is mostly good. I'm not the biggest fan of Underneath the Mango Tree, apart from possibly when Honey's singing it, and also when Bond sings it with her. Before that, not really much of a fan. Jump Up is, on the other hand, a pretty fun and enjoyable song. I think we only get it once or twice. That's a shame. The Bond theme, however, is amazing and masterful of music and a staple of cinema, and it's just wow. And I'm glad we had the first third of the titles to hear the full thing, or at least most of the theme, blaring away in all its glory, as well as other great moments with it taking place. Although it could have been used a bit more in the action scenes, but it was still pretty good, especially during the personal moments. And the first scene with Bond revealing himself, masterful. Masterful cinematography, masterful editing, masterful setup, suspense, and the reveal just perfect. There's a few movie mistakes a little bit after that, as he's got a cigarette in the mouth, cigarette in his fingers, not in his mouth though. A couple of movie mistakes a little bit afterwards, but the actual reveal itself is great. So, that's it from my review of Dr. No. I'm going to give this film a 8 out of 10. Yeah, I don't think it's completely perfect. It is a bit slow. There's a lot of talking and more setup than maybe that's needed. But I'm not saying there should be lots of action scenes. One of the car chases had some dodgy rear projection window. Why couldn't they just film an actual car chase? They could have had Connery driving. They could have filmed an actual car chase. Of course, the bit where Bond's going underneath a digger thing, I can understand why they used some background projection for that, because that would have to have been a stunt. Although I'm sure a stunt driver could have done it. But I think they could have done that car chase without the rear projection. It is a very dodgy rear projection. Well, probably one of the dodgiest in the series. But the outcome of the scene is enjoyable, to say the least. But despite some nitpicks with the editing and the pacing, it is still a really enjoyable, really fun and really entertaining film, and a great way to start the James Bond series. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. The next James Bond review, which I will be doing soon, will be From Russia with Love. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome to my first James Bond review, excluding Spectre, which I did on the main channel as part of the 2015 films. Oh, bloody hell. So now we can officially start the series off, aside from that. So Bond investigates what happened to Strangways, and eventually, with help from Felix Leiter and local fisherman who is a CIA. So eventually comes across the villainous Dr. No, a Chinese villain. With help from the event, Bond then defeats the excuse me. and Jump Up is also. There's only a few but the actual reveal itself is still pretty good. But the actual reveal of it's. So that's it from my review of Dr. No. But on. Yes. I think they're on their way to a funeral. I think they're on their way to a funeral. Yes. Yes. That's taking me out. Yes. Yes. What did you say? What did you say? What did you say?